Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. This is Ukraine War breaking news update for the 16th of April 2025. And I want to just talk you through an issue that you might think is initially a US political breaking news piece. And yes, this has a lot to say about the situation with DOGE and Elon Musk absolutely torching institutions within the US, but actually this is also connected to, well, potentially could well be connected to Russia as well. Now, what has been going on? Well, NPR has a very big article on a whistleblower disclosure detailing how DOGE may have taken sensitive labor data. So this concerns the National Labor Relations Board and its headquarters in Washington. Now, the first thing to note is this is not only happening in the NLRB. This is happening supposedly in a whole suite of different departments across the US government. So this is a small independent federal agency that investigates and adjudicates complaints about unfair labor practices, and it stores reams of potentially sensitive data from confidential information about employees who want to form unions to proprietary business information. So this is going to be very important information if you want to break unions, if you want to have knowledge about businesses that might be vying for contracts with the government. So if you're someone like Elon Musk, breaking unions and having knowledge about people who might be involved in contractual negotiations with the US government, that's going to be very useful. So there's your highly controversial activities from Elon Musk's DOGE team. So let's look at some of the details. DOGE employees, who are effectively led by White House advisor and billionaire tech CEO Elon Musk, appear to have their sights set on accessing the NLRB's internal systems. They said that the unit's overall mission is to review agency data for compliance with the new administration's policies to cut costs and maximize efficiency, which is not really going to be anything they get from this kind of data, by the way. But according to the official whistleblower disclosure shared with Congress and other federal overseers that was obtained by NPR, subsequent interviews with the whistleblower and records of internal communications technical staff members were alarmed about what DOGE engineers did when they were granted access, particularly when those staffers noted a spike in data leaving the agency. So the next thing to note is that, and I talked about this previously, there's a good analysis of this by Kara Swisher and Scott Galloway, where they talked about how it appears that one of the main objectives for Elon Musk in doing DOGE isn't cutting costs, isn't saving the government money, but it's actually getting data. Because he is in competition with people like Sam Altman from OpenAI and other big artificial intelligence entities. He needs to get a competitive advantage with his Grok and his own artificial intelligence project over these others because he's, I think, lagging somewhat. And actually, DOGE is perfect. If he can get essentially the entire information of the American government and put that through his AI, not only is he going to get the advantages, corporate business espionage advantage for himself in order to be able to gain more contracts with the government and grift and make money, etc., and get greater power. There's all that, but there's also the power of the data and plugging that into his AI project. And that appears to be what's going on here, where just huge amounts of data is being extracted. So let us go on. We have the subsequent interviews with the whistleblower and records of internal communications technical staff members were alarmed about what DOGE engineers did when they were granted access, particularly when they noticed a spike in data leaving the agency. It's possible that the data included sensitive information on unions, ongoing legal cases, and corporate secrets. Data that four labor law experts tell NPR should almost never leave the NLRB, and that has nothing to do with making the government more efficient or cutting spending. And that's the thing. This is the objectives of doing that look nothing like the objectives that DOGE supposedly are working towards. Meanwhile, according to the disclosure and records of internal communications, members of the DOGE team asked that their activities not be logged on the system and then appeared to try to cover their tracks behind them, turning off monitoring tools and manually deleting records of their access. Evasive behavior that several cybersecurity experts interviewed by NPR compared to what criminal or state-sponsored hackers might do. The employees grew concerned that the NLRB's confidential data could be exposed, particularly after they started detecting suspicious login attempts from an IP address in Russia. According to the disclosure, eventually, the disclosure continued, the IT department launched a formal review of what it deemed a serious ongoing security breach or potentially illegal removal of personally identifiable information. The whistleblower believes that this suspicious activity warrants further investigation by agencies with more resources, like the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or the FBI. But of course, those agencies are fully under the control of Donald Trump and his lackeys. Now, this whistleblower and a legal expert with him are interviewed by Jake Tapper on CNN here. We're just jumping a couple of minutes in to talk about this data extraction.
So in your complaint that you shared with Congress, you include this screenshot we're going to show. It shows a large spike in data leaving the National Labor Relations Board. You say that's extremely unusual because data almost never directly leaves the databases. How do you know what was being removed, and is it possible you saw something that has a plausible explanation behind it?
I definitely would prefer that, actually. I've tried to prove the negatives multiple times. It correlates directly with data that was exiting the database at the same time. There's a lot of corroborating evidence that points to it. That was the first thing I tried to do, is just rule out every other solution before I went this route.
We reached out to the White House about your claims, which obviously were made public when you came forward and went to Congress. You got this statement, quote, "It is months old news that President Trump signed an executive order to hire DOGE employees at agencies and coordinate data sharing. Their highly qualified team has been extremely public and transparent in its efforts to eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse across the executive branch, including the National Labor Relations Board," unquote.
And of course, that claim from the White House is directly contradicted by the experience of the people at NLRB, where they're saying they weren't transparent. They're trying to cover their tracks behind them and erase all evidence of them doing the stuff that they were doing. So just throw that in there.
What's your response to that?
So I believe that if that was true, we would have access to the code that they're running. We would be able to see these things that they're hiding. I don't believe that there's transparency, and that's all I'm asking for here.
And Andrew, give us the view, the 30,000-foot view here, because obviously this data could be beneficial to others, either corporations or even a foreign actor with malign intention. How do you know that?
So we know that because the information that the National Labor Relations Board looks at are basically corporate documents and things that involve unions. So there's a lot of sensitive corporate information that is included within this, which yes could be of interest to Elon Musk, but at the same time they're of interest to our foreign adversaries. I'd like to step back for a moment and talk about what the larger implication is here. So this is happening at the NLRB, at the National Labor Relations Board, but Dan is brave enough to come forward, and there are others within the government that I've talked to and that we've talked to who have seen something identical as this. There are two data points that I want to point out that should give everybody pause. The first thing, what Dan witnessed, was that within 15 minutes of DOGE employees creating user accounts, i.e. usernames and passwords, within 15 minutes of those accounts being created, somebody or something from Russia tried to log in with the right username and right passwords, that is to say, the right credentials, and that happened over 20 times.
So let's just pause a second. DOGE created a bunch of usernames and passwords, and within 15 minutes of DOGE creating those, so that's Elon Musk's team creating those usernames and passwords, someone with that newly created username and password in Russia is attempting to get into the system in the NLRB. Luckily, the NLRB picked up IP addresses or whatever and was able to shut that down as far as I can work out. But for 15 attempts for Russians to, one presumes Russians to attempt to access the NLRB through the DOGE created passwords that had only just been created, this is incredibly worrying.
Second data point, which is really critical, is that DOGE has also been using Starlink as a means to exfiltrate data. What that means is that, from our understanding, that Russia has a direct pipeline of information through Starlink, which means that anything going through Starlink is going to Russia. We also know that this is not unique to.
I don't know anything about that particular claim. That's a massive, massive claim, but I'm sure as a legal entity, these guys have looked into that. So not only are the usernames and passwords appearing in Russia straight away, but Russia is supposedly able to access anything exfiltrated through Starlink here. And that means that they're getting hold of that data through another route.
The NLRB. This is happening government-wide. And then the other thing that I wanted to flag for everybody is that right now, and I don't want to say that this is intentional, it could be very well have been a mistake, is that critical infrastructure databases in many government agencies, as we understand it, have been exposed to the open internet, which includes critical databases at the Department of Energy, which includes a lot of our nuclear regulatory agency material. So right now, the real concern is that this is not unlike Chernobyl and all of the control panels lighting up after the meltdown. This is serious, and I just want to commend Dan for coming forward to bring this to everybody's attention, because this really is the tip of the iceberg.
If this isn't worrying you as an American citizen, you need to get your head checked. So just, I mean, this is a massive article in NPR and well worth a read. You'll get a lot of information here, a lot of evidence and piecing the puzzle together, etc., etc. I mean, as you can see, I'm still scrolling down. This is a huge, huge article. And deeply, deeply worrying. I just want to go to the bit about Russia here. So within minutes after DOGE accessed the NLRB's systems, someone with an IP address in Russia started trying to log in, according to Berulis's disclosure. The attempts were near real time, according to that disclosure. Those attempts were blocked, but they were especially alarming. Whoever was attempting to log in was using one of the newly created DOGE accounts, and the person had the correct username and password, according to Berulis. While it's possible the user was disguising their location, it's highly unlikely they'd appear to be coming from Russia if they wanted to avoid suspicion. Cybersecurity experts interviewed by NPR explained. On their own, a few failed login attempts from a Russian IP address aren't a smoking gun, those cybersecurity experts interviewed by NPR said, but given the overall picture of activity, it's a concerning sign that foreign adversaries may already be searching for ways into government systems that DOGE engineers may have left exposed. Quote, when you move fast and break stuff, the opportunity to ride the coattails of authorized access is ridiculously easy to achieve, said Handorf. What he means is that if DOGE engineers left access points in the network open, it would be very easy for spies and criminals to break in and steal data behind DOGE. So in other words, you've got two options here. One, DOGE is complicit in Russia getting hold of stuff, right? And there's some backdoor deal between Musk and Russia, which is plausible, right? Him and Russia appear to be, close, bedfellows. Or the work that his DOGE team are doing is so amateur and so destructive that it allows the Russians to just ride on the coattails after they go and do their stuff, and then somehow get hold of the newly created, so they have access to the DOGE kind of systems or something that allow them to get access to those usernames and passwords and straight away try and log in on the back of their creation. Which is incredibly plausible as well, right? So neither of these are good, right? DOGE is either way responsible for Russia being able to, gain access or potentially gain access to incredibly sensitive information. On top of the fact that DOGE has got access to that information, is relaying that back to Elon Musk, who's able to use sensitive union and corporate information to his own ends. Talks about transparency. Do we know what's happened to that exfiltrated data? Do we know why it's been exfiltrated? That's not transparency. There's absolutely no... I'm sick and tired of hearing the White House say how transparent DOGE is. It's literally the opposite. It is untransparent. It's going out of its way to not be transparent. It's the exact opposite of what the White House says. And this is insanely dangerous. Anyway, to continue... he said he could foresee. he said he could also see foreign adversaries trying to recruit or pay DOGE team members for access to sensitive data. So there's another, actually that's a third option. So the two options are DOGE through Elon Musk are complicit in this with Russia, or that they're so bad that Russia's riding in on the coattails, or that they're paying off a couple of DOGE employees, which is probably very easy to do. Here's a couple of $1 million in Bitcoin. There you go. All right, thank you very much. I'll let you have some labor union, some NLRB data, and then go on a very long holiday to the Bahamas. So, yeah, it would not surprise me if DOGE is accidentally compromised. This is exactly why we usually architect systems using best practices like the principle of least privilege. Anne Lewis, a former director of Technology Transformation Services and General Services Administration, told NPR in an interview, quote, "The principle of least privilege is a fundamental cybersecurity concept that states that users should have only the minimum rights, roles, and permissions required to perform their roles and responsibilities. This protects access to high-value data and critical assets that helps prevent unauthorized access, accidental damage from user errors, and malicious actions." Bakaj, Barulis' lawyer, told NPR in a written statement, quote, "This case has been particularly sensitive as it involves a possibility of sophisticated foreign intelligence gaining access to sensitive government systems, which is why we want the Senate Intelligence Committee directly to be involved, one presumes." So, yeah, much more in that whole, as he said in that interview, it's the tip of the iceberg. There is much, much more going on here through other agencies. It's not just the NLRB. That's an incredibly powerful article. And it's worth also knowing this. I was going to report this later. I'm wondering if I can find it. But Pentagon, a whole bunch of IT people are resigning en masse from the Pentagon. That is incredibly worrying. Yes, so under pressure from the Elon Musk-led Department of Government Efficiency, so DOGE, nearly all the staff of the Defense Digital Service, so the sorts of people in the Pentagon you think might be trying to come up with solutions to what's going on here, the Pentagon's fast-track tech development arm are resigning over the coming month. Nearly the entire team from the Pentagon is resigning due to what DOGE is doing. The US is being dismantled. And it's being done by Elon Musk and Donald Trump and the Trump administration. They are doing everything they can to hand power to either Russia and China and put a trade war with China right now is handing power to China because it's throwing everyone in the world into China's arms. So they're either handing power to Russia and China, the keys of power, or they're handing those keys of power to oligarchs and billionaires. I keep warning you guys. I keep warning you. It appears to be happening. Take note. And this is a marvelous bit of work by NPR, by the way. And again, NPR is something that the Trump administration is trying to defund. Those checks and balances, you get rid of them, you end up with a dictatorship.